have just started.
Yes.
We're on Zoom here.
Yes, I can see you.
Excellent, good hands. Okay, I don't know if I called for nomination the third time. Director Hewitt declined. Any other nominations? Okay,
Director Graham's raising her hand.
oh, sorry, I couldn't see that. Director Graham, go ahead.
I'm sorry, I'm on a new computer and I'm having trouble getting a chat to come open, but I would like to nominate Director Vandenberg.
Okay. Do you accept the nomination, Director Vandenberg?
Yes, I will.
Okay, we are going to have to do ballots. So I'm going to pass around the ballots, or
Yes, of course.
my handy helper will pass this around, and then we'll.
Your official ballot.
And for those online, can you just send me an email, Sangeeta Sudan, to let me know?
To two people.
Two people, and Shelley. Shelley and Sangeeta, please email us with your preferred.
Do we get
point
an
of-
opportunity to address the committee as candidates?
Yeah,
Oh, yes.
point of order. Yeah, that's what I was going to say. Is
Oh,
that
my
whenever we've had
apologies.
an election, we
I do
allow
this-
candidates to speak.
Yes, my apologies. Thank you. Okay, so before you do the voting, please, I'd like the candidates to speak, starting with Director Main.
Okay, thank you. And thank you for the nomination. It has been my pleasure and honor to serve this advisory committee as the chair for a number of years. A big part of the role of committees is that this is where discussion takes place. And I think it takes a special set of skills and abilities to manage a roundtable discussion such as the ones that we have had here on more than one occasion. And it's challenging, but I think it's really fruitful in informing all of us of what our colleagues are thinking about a particular topic. Sometimes we come out of it with a consensus, and other times we don't. But then when it moves across to most of our stuff moves to board eventually, it comes with a real good base of having had these robust discussions. So I think it's fun in an odd sort of way, but us politicians are kind of odd. And I would be happy to serve another year as the chair of this advisory committee. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Main. Director Vandenberg?
Thank you. And I apologize for my hesitation, only because as I had been chatting about this before, my disadvantage is where I live. And in order to be an effective chair, you ought to be in this room and to be fully prepared. So with that hesitation aside, I have very quickly thought through the logistics and would be completely prepared to make the journey each and every time to be an effective chairperson. Now, no one here has seen my history and my previous chair abilities, and I certainly have had that experience. And I'll go back and touch on that, the preparation part, and to make sure that we have a good, wholesome discussion, but moving at a good pace, I think is very critical to how a chair should conduct a meeting. And that's what you would expect to see from myself. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Vandenberg. All right, so back to the old instructions before. Ballots have been distributed, and for those online, if you could send me your nomination, it's between Director Hewitt and Director Vandenberg. Sorry, Director Main, I saw Hewitt on the screen there. Director Main and Director Vandenberg, please send your email to both Shelley and I. Thank you.
What's Shelley's email address?
Let's try as Kindred.
S.
Yes.
Kindred. Can you put it in chat?
We'll put it in chat. We will put it in chat.
Thank you. Well, it ain't here. Yes, Kindred.
It's the waiter.
Yeah. Full service here.
Okay. All right. Here we go, mail. Mail. Yes, Kindred.
Hans, you're not muted.
Sorry, thank you. I'm not even, it's odd. I'm not muted, but I'm also not, I changed to go to, I'm in my mail service. I don't know how come I'm not muted. I will go back if I can. There we go.
Back to the old days. But, I mean, almost, yeah.
Oh. Yeah. Tom, you look way too relaxed for a meeting. Look at him, he's lounging away.
Director Cunningham, I'm just waiting for you.
Thank you. When I went tried to mute because I was unmuted, my machine shut off and put me into Microsoft Teams. I don't know I'm back on now, but I still haven't sent my vote. Sorry about that. Here it comes.
Okay.
To wait.
I know why it says it. I had a question. You the role that longer back when I was in. Can't do that.
Director Cunningham.
Okay, you should have received it by now.
Not yet.
Price Waterhouse soon to go.
Okay, I got it.
Thank you.
I'll break it.
Okay.
What was that, sorry? No, not Margaret Kerr. They're on the green beacon, the winter beacon.
Shoot.
Oh. I'm on the bus to Cologne, Friday morning. Going to Mexico, so.
What part of Mexico?
Going to Bucerias, just outside of Puerto Vallarta,
Oh.
smaller town, hardly any.
Just so you guys know, you're not muted.
Oh, I don't care, who knows what I'm doing.
Now I can see you, but I can't hear you. Before I could hear you and I couldn't see you. Let's make up our minds.
They muted because they're off counting the ballots and we told them they were muted. They were unmuted. It's just a pause before the ballots get back and then we'll hear them again, I'm sure.
Okay,
So you're muted right now.
sorry.
Oh, you're muted.
Okay, the ballots have been counted and Director Vandenberg was declared the Community Sustainability Advisory Committee Chair for 2025. It says 24 on my notes, but it should be 25. Congratulations, Director Vandenberg.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
Alrighty then.
You
Now,
just have to sit here.
I'm at a disadvantage. Shelley, would you be so kind to monitor the cat for me and make sure the dog doesn't get in and chat for me?
And we'll take a 5-minute break. We just need to orient Director Vandenberg to the agenda. And then
Okay, take 5, everyone. Kelly, let us know when you're ready. Thank you very much, everybody on board, can the TV hear the room? Thumbs up if you can. Director Davidoff. Thank you, Amy. We're all good to go. Thank you. And the next order of business, I think officially it's been called to order. We've had our elections. And I really don't have a chair's address other than work with me today.
Sorry, we need to have a record, right here. Destroy the ballot.
Oh.
We need to put that on.
Director Jackman, I think that's what you were intending, was to destroy the ballots. Seconded. Said it. And all those not in favor. I'm seeing nothing on the screen, on the TV, I'm going to call it, and in the room. And then we will move to, how come I don't have, oh, I do have that. Yes, the chair's address, I'm doing that right now. This is the best you're going to get. And we acknowledge and respect the Indigenous peoples within whose traditional lands we are now meeting. And before we have the adoption of the agenda, I would like to propose a change in the agenda order. And under old business, I would like to suggest the first item become 9.2, the second item become 9.3, and the third item become 9.1. As I'm advised by staff, it ought to flow a little bit better. So those are the changes to the agenda from my point of view. I'm looking around the room for anything else. Looking to staff, not seeing anything. Looking on the TV, and I'm not seeing anything. Can I?
So moved with the reordered items.
Thank you, Director Jackman. Seconded. Any opposed to the agenda? And I am seeing none. First item of business then is old business 9.1, and got to do receipt of the minutes. Adoption agenda, receipt of the minutes. Yes. So I'd like a motion to receive the minutes from December 10th. Director Weatherhead, seconded, Henny.
Sorry, point of order.
Any point of order? Yes. Go
The
for it.
board approves the minutes. We just received them.
Yeah, we just have them. I just want to.
The board approves the minutes. We just received them. So I would have to take that motion and the second to receive the minutes.
Great.
You don't need a motion is my point.
Okay.
Okay, well, it's good practice for the board. So we will skip right alongside that. Now we'll move into old business, and we will, as I had suggested, we will begin with 9.2 to begin with, and I believe who in staff will be leading that discussion.
Thank you.
Harris, thank you.
Thank you, through the chair. So these were two items that 9.2 and 9.3 are two items that weren't addressed at our December meeting. And the first item is CSLAC in review, so 2024 in review. And this is following the recommendation that staff presented to CSLAC in the spring of last year to provide CSLAC an overview of the accomplishments of the year in December in preparation for budget discussions. Some of this information will be familiar. Some of the information will be familiar, and then we'll also provide that review and a 2025 forecast. If you look at in your eScribe on the agenda, the outline on page 1, and then we'll go to page 2, which are the CSLAC objectives as a reminder. Shelley's just bringing them up. So as a reminder, the objectives of CSLAC are to discuss and review projects, to provide input on ideas that can be supported at the board and are acceptable to the public, make recommendations on projects, opportunities, and how to deliver services, all related to sustainability, to relay and receive feedback, and to initiate and participate in developing new ideas and on the implementation of the climate action ideas and the state of climate action annual reporting. Next slide. CSLAC has at its discretion a decision to consider about funding opportunities. And one of them is related to projects. These are short one-off initiatives that have a beginning and an end. And others are related to programs, which are, as we define them, are multi-year initiatives and that are often projects that move past the incubation phase into a longer-term program. Next slide.
Just so you guys know, there's nothing on our screen if you're sharing a presentation.
There's something about.
Thank you. Shelley is working on that, but maybe we'll just take a second and give her an opportunity. That way we can all follow along.
Good, Kelly.
Director Jackman, can I, because Shelley's got all this stuff going on, can you be so kind to watch chat for me, please?
I can't get in to the meeting.
Okay.
May I? Yeah.
Oh, okay.
But it would be good if we could get into the meeting. I'm in the waiting room.
Okay. Dan is there now.
You don't think so?
Stop this meeting.
Yeah, if you want to just, I can punch you in the shoulder or something. How hard? Might have to do a little hard. Just get your attention.
Why is this coming up as a team?
It keeps coming up.
So as we transition the entire organization from WebEx to Teams, the only meetings that aren't Teams are committee meetings, like these external meetings, so with the board and committees. So Teams is integrated into your Outlook. So unfortunately, you'll always have an option for a Teams meeting in any of our committee or board meetings. Inside the body of your event, there's a link that is for Zoom. So any of your committee meetings and any of your board meetings are always going to be Zoom, and you'll only find that link in the body of the event. It's unfortunately
So,
Director Jackman?
we used to be able to just use the calendar.
That's right. That's right. So now you have to open the calendar event and you'll see it. Sorry, check.
So within the minutes that you see in front of you, within the eScribe, if you click that link, you ought to go through to Zoom, I would suspect, Director Jackman.
So the meeting Alex admitted to is not this meeting. It's just outside meeting of two. That was so I'll try again, I guess.
Okay, so this is fun. We have mass confusion going on, but we're going to get to the bottom of it. How are you doing, Shelley? If it's okay with the share.
It's just not showing the option to share my screen like it normally would.
You enable me to share and I'll share.
So I think what we'll do then, Paris, if you can, on 9.2, be very explicit as to what slide number you're referring to.
Yes.
And then those of us that are not in the room, if you can ensure that your eScribe is up and you can follow along via that slide number. Let's try that and see if we can continue.
Oh, we have it up now. Great.
Never mind everything I just said.
Good backup. Good backup.
Adaptability.
All right. So Paris, if you would continue, you're on slide 2.
Thank you very much.
Objectives.
So I'll restate this information. So CFLAG operates on the following objectives: to discuss and review projects and initiatives that are socially, culturally, economically, environmentally sustainable, provide input that will result in sustainability initiatives, make recommendations on sustainability initiatives, including projects, opportunities, how to deliver services, and other matters related to the board, receive and relay feedback, and initiate and participate in the review of both climate action ideas and the state of climate action annual reporting. Excellent. There are 2 streams that annually CSLAC makes a decision about whether or not to fund. One is related to projects. These are short one-off initiatives. And the other is related to programs, which are multi-year initiatives and often are projects that have past the pilot phase or the incubation phase and are now proceeding into a more long-term plan.
Ferris, I'm going to stop there. Anybody have any questions on the CSLAC objectives at this point? Looking around, Director Jackman.
I'll bring it up more when we look at the bylaw, but I always viewed CSLAC objectives as being more broad. Back to the days of Jim Gustafson, we said, well, we'd like to do this. This is what business fitness service. We'd like to do that. We'd like to explore something. We'd like to evolve maybe something that would become a service, like diking was a big issue years back. So CSLAC was, in my mind, created to be more broad, you know, social, economic, cultural, but not only through, even though sustainability is in the title, they're just services that need to be explored. Not just because they're sustainable, but because they are things we need to be able to have a forum to speak to. Over the years, we've lost participants. I think we started with 19 out of 20 of our board members in this committee, and now 7 of them are not with us. I think part of that reason could be because the scope seems to be aiming more to climate action or a few more limited things, as opposed to, is this a forum where we can start a conversation that is too general to fit or, you know, shoehorn underneath an existing department and too complex of a conversation to possibly hold a board. So to me, you know, when I look at the 2024 synopsis, that is a great snapshot of success and things we've been doing that are worth doing, but it's not where we started. And the same with the bylaw. When I look at the lens of the bylaw, it's what we're doing, but it's not where we started. So that's overriding thoughts in my mind as we go through the whole conversation. That in the future, we should be able to do more or do things a little differently, because that was the fundamental intent. Didn't have time to dig out my files from a decade back, but that's stuck in my mind.
So before I move to staff to allow to respond, so I'm going to look around the room and see if there's anyone else that would like to add to that comment. Director Main.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Director Jackman's comments were spot on. This is a forum where we can think about big ideas. We can think about different ways of looking at our community and different ways of supporting our communities, not just the climate action piece, but broader, bigger pieces. And we have had some initiatives that, you know, came back to us and we went, well, that one's not going anywhere. But we have other ones, and one example is the geothermal investigation project that has attracted other investment and is growing and will grow into a viable project on its own. So we're here to take chances. That's what this committee does. We talk about things that they're not ready to go to the whole board yet. And they could be anything from alternative energy production, alternative heat production, food security, farm and agriculture supports. So it's important that we keep that in mind, that we're here to think big.
So before I take Director Watson, Sangeeta, did you want to opt in?
Yes, through the chair. I just wanted to comment on what Director Jackman said. The bylaw itself, the establishment bylaw, has a broader context to the purpose of the group. I think these objectives, and Ferris can correct me, are intended to just outline how we operate, not necessarily our purpose, but rather how we operate, and what we are what our objectives are that we're trying to achieve. Is that correct, Ferris? Is that how you see it?
Thank you, through the chair. Be in mind, my hope would be that they would be able to speak to each other, and so they would be one in the same, or at least the objectives would be informed by the purpose. So if there's a feeling of misalignment, then there's some work to be done on my part. I would just highlight that the mention of climate action ideas and state of climate action are because currently there's no particular oversight, and there was discussion at the board level that CSLAC would provide that oversight at the committee level. The other and objectives that precede that particular item are all related to the broad areas of energy, climate action, food and agriculture, transportation, and water. So climate action is just one of 5 categories that CSLAC has been doing work within.
Just to remind everybody that 9.2 is 2024 in review. We are still talking about the objectives. It's raising good conversation. I do have 3 more on our list, and we will proceed with those. But just to remind that we do have a presentation to get through. So Director Watson.
Yeah, thanks. Thank you for keeping us on track. Chair Vandenberg, welcome to the team. I'll keep my comments brief and just state that I really struggle with this service. And when we get into the other items, I can elaborate. The objectives and ensuring we know the process, that's good. But overall, in terms of performance and outcomes, I very much am on the edge on requesting to be removed from it. But I'll elaborate at the appropriate places in the agenda. Thank you.
Thank you. Director Cunningham.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, I recall one of the first things we did as a committee many years ago, of course, when we first started, was we looked at the idea of LED streetlights, and we arranged for, and the committee, after approving it, those of us who didn't have streetlights and wanted them, arranged to, we got them as a mass purchase and had them installed, and now we're all very, very happy because our streetlight costs are well reduced. That was a thing that sort of, that's an environmentally good thing to do, and those of us who were able to benefited from it, and those for both municipalities and rural areas. Other things I'd like to see now is, and it's already been mentioned that it's possible, is to look at such things as, say, electric charging stations, locating more of them in the district and getting the grant funding for those kinds of things, because that's a big and up and coming thing, and of course it's also environmentally wise. So we could do that as a committee as well. Those are the kinds of projects I'd like to see, besides the ones we're already doing. We need to expand a little bit, maybe shorten the way we talk about them, but at least take action on some of those other items as well. Water, those things that were mentioned at the beginning that Director Jackman mentioned and have been mentioned and are in our bylaws. We should be taking a look at those as well as the other ones that we're doing now. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Director Cunningham. You've given some examples of broadening the scope as it's been referred to. And then I'll take Director Popoff and then Sangeeta, and then we'll be moving along.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Being one of the few directors that was with CSLAC when it first got established, and it's a concern that directors are slowly dropping off CSLAC, because it is a good service. It's a service to explore all possibilities that we have that don't fall in within the normal scope. And one of the reasons given by some of the directors that have dropped off is, I have nothing happening in my area. Well, today you don't, tomorrow you might. So we all work together towards a common goal, regardless of whose area it is. And I'd like to encourage the directors that have dropped off to join back into CSLAC, and hopefully we can look at all areas in time. Thank you.
Thank you. Speaking to the value of CSLAC, Sangeeta, and then Paris, we'll move on to the next slide.
So through the chair, one of my discussions with Jim Gustafson in the day, the reason why this service was created is because there were opportunities and funding associated with them, as well as initiatives the board wanted to take on that weren't fully visible in S100 in general admin. So CSAC was intended to be kind of that incubator area, so that initiatives that need evolving and some resources put to them, to have that vetting here at this table. So I just wanted to remind everyone that that was the intention. If there is no CSLAC, then they go back into general admin, whatever those initiatives are.
All right, thank you. Paris.
Thank you. Next slide, please.
And we are on which one, Paris?
Slide.
That one right there?
That one right there. So page 5 in your agenda package.
Okay.
Or, no, they're all page 5.
They are.
Yeah, curious. Thank you very much. So, yes, so these are the 2 areas of funding that CSLAC annually can make a decision about. And the way that we have restructured the granting cycle and budget year is that in December, there's an annual review of looking back on what was accomplished in that year, and then looking forward to consider where there may be gaps in the project planning and how those could be filled by projects that are relevant to the communities and also to committee members. So we're planning on that visioning happening more explicitly in February of 2025, and then for budget discussion to happen at the same time, whether the CSLAC budget includes funding would be approved in 2020 March, and then beginning in April, we would do a call for applications in the specific areas that have been identified by CSLAC.
Thank you. My only question around this is just clarity on the project funding. Further down, we're going to see has to be within 5 focus areas as outlined. And it's $10,000 per year. Is that, no, pardon me, how many funding units can we take on in a given year? And is it an aggregate for the $10,000? In other words, it's not $10,000 per.
Thank you, through the chair. Typically, CSLAC has funded to the amount of $25,000 with 2 projects or 2.5 projects per year of $10,000 each, and then sometimes that $5,000 has carried over to the next year, or then it's been allocated to for a smaller project.
That's project funding.
Yes, that's project funding.
Okay, thank you. I'm not seeing any questions, so please continue.
Thank you. So this provides a bit more information about how we have been allocating the funding. So projects, we see them as investigations. Programs have often, and Central Kootenay Food Policy Council, which is now in Service 100, but started here and then was funded for core funding for a number of years and then moved to S100. That is also something that has been in the consideration of CSLAC to support, particularly support initiatives that really struggle to access core funding, but are a priority for residents and for the board in the RDCK.
Paris, got a question, Director Hewitt? Or
thank you. Through the chair, can we go back to the previous slide, please? Thank you. Just wondering, this list of dates isn't in alignment with the confirmed CSLAC meeting dates. Does that mean that the other dates are ones that will just be staff that will be meeting to talk about these things? Or is our schedule that we adopted not correct?
Paris?
Thank you, through the chair. So February is a CSLAC, and that is a time when CSLAC would meet and consider future projects and also consider whether or not to include it in the budget. March 2025 isn't intended to note a CSLAC meeting, but more a milestone of that the budget, the overall RDCK budget is approved. And then April is a CSLAC meeting, June is a CSLAC meeting, and then by the time July is noted there as following approval of projects in June, then the contracting, there's a contracting period, and then projects would be launched in July.
Supplemental, Director Hewitt?
No, that explains it. I was just trying to tie the 2 sets of dates together.
Thank you.
Okay,
Thank you.
Looking around, I don't see any more hands raised. Please continue.
So historically, since 2017, these have been the areas of our work. As we're no longer working with housing, we're now working with transportation. And so 2024, transportation replaced housing, and that will be the ongoing focus, 5 areas of focus for 2025.
So just as a reminder, this is 2024 kind of in review.
Yes.
We will be looking at 2025 here in a moment, to which I would encourage any further suggestions, much along what everybody's talking about. Thank you.
Thank you. So the projects that were active for 2024 fell into the three areas of food and agriculture, water, and energy. Central Kootenai Food Policy Council, there was funding for the work that was project work in that group. Elk Group Conservation, CSLAC supported work there. The water sustainability planning that's happening in the Creston Valley, Slocan Lake and River Partnership, and the natural asset management in the Weimer Watershed, Quartz Creek. Energy, there was a grid resilience pilot that was started in 2023 and continued on. And then there was a regional mobility working group, which continued its work in 2024.
Looking for any questions or comments? And seeing none, thank you. Continue.
The following slides provides more detail on all the work that was happening in 2024. As you'll see, that it also included climate action that was specific to the work that was happening through S100, but it did impact, of course, the work that was happening in CSLAC as well. And then on the far right, you'll see the distribution of time, staff time, and also in the middle, funding, and then the timeline. This slide provides a proposal.
Before we move on, and under food and agriculture, the Elk Group Conservation, when will we be effectively receiving a report on that?
Thank you.
And could that be tracked whenever you have the opportunity, so that I don't have to keep asking those kind of questions, or anyone?
Thank you, through the chair. So yes, our project updates typically provide that information on at each CSLAC meeting of when a project will be completed and when CSLAC can expect the report. For most projects, we usually allow for the full fiscal year, and so usually the project completes in March 31st. Elk Group has completed the project because they're a farming project, and so they completed their project, and we have received the final report, and you will receive it in February.
Thank you. Director Hewitt.
Thank you again, once again, Chair. Just wondered, it would be helpful to have an idea of what stage the projects are in as far as what year, because it's stated that they can only be funded for 5 years. So in what year are they? Because it seemed like the Food Policy Council has been on our list for quite a while. So is it possible to have that information, and is that information shared with them on a regular basis so they know to get themselves prepared to find alternative sources once our 5-year threshold is completed?
Good question. Would you like to respond to that?
Thank you, through the chair. Yes, great point. We can definitely include that of what year and how much funding they have received to date. And also in the case of the Central Food Policy Council, it has moved to S100. And so we can also include that transition from how long it was in CSLAC and to how long it is now in S100. Great.
Thank you. Supplemental, Director Hewitt?
No, thank you.
Thank you. This is a good time now. Can you describe to us, for a lot of us new people, I can hear Cheryl talking right now, what is the difference, primary difference, or the relationship between S100 and S105?
Thank you, through the chair. S100 is our general admin, and so that is, unless we have needed another service that provides all our backbone service funding, and S100 is specific to sustainability, so it is CSLAC.
S105.
S105, yes.
Okay, so I guess my next question, if I was to give myself a supplemental, is, so S100 is staff time and S105 is project costs? And so then my question would be, why can't we just have one service?
So, can I explain?
Yes.
Not sure. Through the chair, I don't know if Stuart Horn is on there, but he can explain maybe a little bit more eloquently. S100 is our general administration service, and it basically supports the administration department, which includes finance, and also some of the other like corporate admin, etc. Why projects migrate from S105, which is sustainability, to general administration is if the scope of the project is broad and covers the region. And so that's why they've been moving over there. So we currently have the Central Food Policy Council in S100, and it was incubated here. We also have Central Kootenai Invasive Species, which is dealing with our invasive species management on our lands, regional district lands. So it applies to resource recovery, properties, parks, etc. What's another one? My brain is going out.
RDC, the climate action.
The climate action, which applies to the region as well. But Stuart, I see you with the camera on. Maybe you can explain a little bit more.
Stuart, did you want to jump in?
Sure. Through the chair, I think it goes back to the point that Director Jackman made at the beginning of the discussion regarding projects that you're taking a look at within this service might not necessarily be related to climate, but don't necessarily have a service to be in. And then once they get flushed out a bit more in terms of what the benefit is and the scope of them are, the board then makes a decision whether or not it's a CSLAC scope only project that should stay in this service and related to the participants in it, or whether or not it's something that's much more regional, has a broader application, and should be considered for funding out of general administration. And that's really how those projects ended up over in S100, is that they might have started here as a discussion or a pilot project or to get it off the ground. And then after its full value had been seen in the scope, it got moved over to general admin.
Okay, thank you for that explanation. I'm going to go to Director Watson next, but I understand that Director Page is here, and could I have somebody offer freedom of the floor to Director Page, Director Jackman, second in Maine? You vote on that? Everybody in favor? Yeah. Let's raise the hands this time. Wake up, everybody. Come on. And Director Page, welcome. And Director Watson, you'll please go ahead. Director Page, you're next, and then Director May.
Thank you. This is one of the parts where I can identify or share with the committee why I struggle with this committee. It's not because I don't have projects in my area. I very much see the regional value of our work, and that's the reason why I struggle with this committee, because it's a defined service. It's not all areas. And areas leave because there's also the complication of how much we overcomplicate the work. I really struggle with the administration on this service, and what I see is a lot of redundancy. And so I'll get into that in further sections, but regarding your main question, Director Vandenberg, Chair Vandenberg, so much of this is regional. And so that's why we moved Central Kootenai Food Policy Council into general admin, because it wasn't specific to the areas paying into this service. And everything else in this, even if it's Quartz Creek Asset Management approach, that is a template in which we have so many other watersheds we can use that for. So I do see this as regional work. I don't see this as participants only work, but we are the participants and it's not the full board. So that's one of my primary reasons why I struggle with this service. So I thought I'd just share that.
Thank you, Director Watson. So that is your point of view. I don't know that staff has anything to add to that. I'm going to move on to Director Page. How are you?
I'm good. How are you? Yeah, I agree with some of the points I'm hearing in terms of finding ways to separate the jello from the marshmallows. But just a reminder that a lot of this, from my understanding, I'm happy to be corrected, but when we get that LCAP funding and it goes in here to address various plans and initiatives on a rural basis, that same LCAP funding is being allocated to municipalities on their allocation basis. And so they're also carrying work. And so that's part of trying to figure out where duplication happens, where efficiencies happen, is when you're in this service that you've opted into with its additional scope, when it gets punted back to general admin, you start to create other duplications between the members in terms of what kind of workloads are being spent doing that kind of thing. So there's that part of it to keep in mind if this ever gets reorganized in some way. It is a way of making sure we're not duplicating over top of what municipalities might already be doing in their own work.
Thank you. Anything further at this point before I go to Director Main? A lot of information, a lot of comments coming out in terms of CSLAC and its future. I really would like to suggest that staff be taking notes, and we'll kind of wrap it all up here yet today, I'm hoping. Director Main?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. This has been, a point of note in the entire time that CSLAC has existed, that we have a group of directors who commit to doing this particular work of looking at these things, of taking in the information, of taking in the applications and the requests for investigation of a project or a type of service that people might be wanting to have. And we look at it and we fund it or not, and eventually it might get to board, because the work we do is for more than just the directors sitting at this table. It's for the Regional District of Central Kootenai in general. We have never really found that balance point where everybody is happy or where everybody is unhappy. It's always such a mix of understanding and willingness to undertake the work to bring these things along. Yeah, we're a business incubator. Yeah, we're dreamers. Yeah, we're doing work that otherwise might not get done. And that could be a good thing or a bad thing, but there you go. When we have some directors sitting here and then other directors going, well, it has nothing to do with me, except that it does.
Great, thank you. Director Jackman, you had your hand up. Was it for something earlier?
A little bit of a different function on S100 not covered yet, but I do want to just acknowledge, as Director Page said, you know, like it or not, if you're in S100, we're all taxed based on assessment, whether it's duplication or you like it or not, that's that, we're all paid. There will never be equity, we'll never all be happy. But as Director Main said, in S105, we take these risks. The other important distinction, S100, we use heavily the flow through. S100 is going to flip the numbers, but we move huge grants through S100 in different places. We move money in and out. So S100 is more than just taxing to manage the corporate necessities. We have to hold elections. We have to have a CFO. We have to have a corporate officer. We have to do these things based on the Local Government Act and Community Charter. That's S100 taxation mainstay. But S100 we also use to flow a lot of other stuff through, which doesn't work for everybody. It's just money comes in, money goes somewhere else. It's an accounting stopgap in some ways. But equity we will never have. The other thought is a lot of this discussion, I'd really love to hear it, but I hope we're not going to make too many firm decisions, even on when we get to bylaw, until after we have this February workshop and talk about this, because that would be where maybe we'll all come better prepared with very specific notes on what we do or don't want this service to do, or whether some people are happy or unhappy, because that's exactly what we've seen over the past years. Discontent, and then people drop away. They don't then come back.
Great, thank you. I'm not seeing anything, any other hands up. Paris, will you continue? What slide are you on now?
Thank you. Next slide, which is the orange slide with the 2025 at the top left-hand corner. So this is a summary of the work that we anticipate for 2025. And you'll see in the highlighted sections in energy and then at the bottom of the page that these are two projects. The grid resilience project that has been underway is expected to come to be complete. I think it completed this last fall, and then there'll be a presentation to the board this spring. And there's an opportunity to either take a next step or look at how else we can support energy resilience in the regional district. And then there's and that's a 5% of staff time that's unallocated. And then there's also 10% unallocated time below that. So a total of 15% of staff time that could be allocated to a new project. As well, we don't have any funding commitments at this time. So if the full funding of $25,000 was approved within the CSLAC budget, then that would be available for these projects to apply for.
Thank you. Sangeeta would like to opt in.
Yeah, I just wanted to clarify, through the chair, I wanted to clarify, this is Paris's time on this work. Kootenai Lake Partnership is another initiative that is under CSLAC. So I just wanted to highlight that, and that's Paris's time.
Okay, and before we move on to the next slide, I just want to point out, though, if you do the math on this particular page, you may come to the same conclusion as I, and this would be for further for up ahead conversation. S100 right now sits at 156,000. S105 sits at 346,500. The total of which is 502,000. I bring this to your attention because we will be going to the budget spreadsheets, and they don't jive, and I need to know why. So just giving you a little bit of something to think about right now. Paris, please continue.
Thank you. So just to summarize again, there's 15% of staff time for 2025 that's available for new projects, and areas to consider. In general, energy has been an area that could be considered for future work across the regional district, and so I put that seed into CSLAC members' thoughts for now as Director Jackman for consideration as we come forward in February for the visioning. And then also just what else? What other projects, what other opportunities could be investigated across the regional district?
Thank you. Director Watson.
Thank you. 2 questions. I'll ask the energy one first. Just through to Paris, we know that we were asked to have the grid stability program present on what they found. And when I reached out to them, they said that it was indicated by staff to wait. So if we're going to be contemplating, what we do with the pilot learnings on that project, when do we anticipate receiving their delegation? They were unsure as to the delay. So that's my first question. And then I have a second question. I'll just pause.
Okay.
Thank you. Through the chair, my understanding was that the proposal that they were bringing forward was whether or not they would present partial findings to CSLAC in June, so that our contract with the project had completed in June, and their project wasn't yet complete. It wasn't complete until this fall. And so I proposed that it made more sense for them to come when the full project was complete rather than providing partial findings. And as I understand that they will be presenting to the board, and that's imminent. I don't know when that's being coordinated. And so so it seemed like it'd be more efficient for them to present once on the full information.
So Director Watson, supplemental, or move on to your second point?
Supplemental, and then I'll ask my second question. Just that I think there's some confusion there. So perhaps you and I and Chelsea can coordinate. I just gave them another $5,000 to complete the request on grid rebates. And I see that the full project funds have not been completed on our end. So I think there's some disconnection there. It'd be good to connect offline. They also are not informed of where they should be presenting and asked me, and I was trying not to intervene. So perhaps take that offline, follow up with me, and we'll get it clear with them. It's very important we see the results of that project, given not only did we fund it, but if we're going to consider a potential expansion, the board should understand what the implications were and the successes. My second question was just regarding staff time. If 15% is unallocated, generally in services, we would then reduce requisition to reflect that. So I'm just curious, is that not a potential outcome of, like, our staff time doesn't always have to be the same as the previous year? So curious on unallocated, can we not just reduce requisition then?
I think that's more of a comment than I don't know you can answer that question. But it's noteworthy. Oh, Sangeeta.
So through the chair, I think the 15% is available for any new initiatives that would come on board once we go through that evaluation process. But staff time can, if there is no projects that are agreed to in 2025, then that 15% can be reallocated out. The projects that are currently underway require oversight, and Paris's time is partially covered through general admin, 25% out of to manage the projects that are within there, including the climate action planning. And so it's the 75% is allocated to sustainability. So not our full FTE is in sustainability.
Supplemental?
Yes, please.
Just a friendly reminder that budgets are discretionary. We can always choose to reduce requisition and not increase more projects. And I state that knowing I just went through the director surveys, and not only is our volume of work extremely high and hard to handle, but I can say on behalf of staff, I can't say on behalf of staff, but in my observation, staff is also experiencing beyond capacity needs. So I think we need to be cognizant of, if we don't have projects allocated, sure, leave it open. Let's see. But saving requisition and reducing projects when we're over capacity is always an option and one we should seriously be considering. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Watson. I'm looking around. I'm seeing nothing further. I think we're wrapping up now, Paris.
So just as a summary, over the last period of time since 2017, CFLAC has initiated 29 projects and programs with an average of 3.6 per year. Most of these initiatives are regional in scope and benefit. And over the last 8 years, so since 2017 since 2017 to 2024, it's leveraged its funding, its contribution to the community 5.3 times for a 2.4 million contribution to community investment.
All right, and under the wire, Director Hewitt, you made it in. Okay, make it good.
Well, it's in direct response to Director Watson's question, and I'm going to play devil's advocate here and say that it's a great idea to think about reducing requisition, and I'm surprised staff didn't say anything, but if it's resulting in the reduction of staff hours, then that, I don't think we can make the determination at this table. If it's reallocating that time from CSLAC and relieving the burden on overworked staff in another department by shifting a staff worker's hours to ease that burden, that would take it off of this. But that staff person, I think, would still exist unless we reduce the hours available to that position. And that's something that would be another discussion. So I think that would bear discussion maybe at a staff level and get a recommendation on how that might work. If, as you say, other staff is at overcapacity.
I'll let staff opt in. I've got Director Jackman and then David off. I'd like to entertain your points of view first.
Thank you. Just on that slide's down now, I guess, but the 5.3 times leveraging is no doubt a serious understatement. Because we see grants that are leveraged and easy to add those up. But just again, take geothermal. We're well high of $250,000. We're probably more like the 300,000 out of 20,000 investments. That's 15 times. But that project has legs now that could go to the few $1 million. Economically, it'll start to be a driver. It goes where we hope it'll go. So the 5.3 times is what we've seen directly kind of flow through. There's a lot more. And I think any other project you pick will probably find this other sort of compound advantage. So that is part of what I like. Again, we take risks, we dream a little bit, we do things. Whether or not it keeps going with us, it has, created a spark elsewhere. So that's something I do appreciate this service, because we can start those conversations and let them go to where they're going to go. Something that can't happen at board, and so we're never going to get full buy-in under S100.
Okay, thank you, Director Jackman. Director Davidoff, you're here. I see your hands up.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Can you hear me okay?
Just barely.
Is that better?
It was fine before. I'm kidding. You know me.
Okay, I gotcha. First of all, congratulations, Kelly, on your being elected chair of this committee. I have listened to the conversation and have been thinking about CSLAC for some time. I was on one of the directors who was here when CSLAC was formed. When it was formed, it was like staff had stated, kind of a catch-all service where we didn't know where to put stuff, and well, let's form CSLAC and take and put it there. Maybe it's time for us to take a look at at CSLAC, and maybe this could become something else, like our S services or A services or whatever it is. But I don't like to, but I kind of think this committee gets a bad rap. We're dealing with some pretty sensitive issues, and in particular, climate change and climate action, and all of these things that are extremely sensitive. Our constituents and ratepayers are many of them are extremely polarized when it comes to the work that we're trying to accomplish with this committee, and staff feels that sting, and have felt it particularly during our climate action, process and meetings that we had. And maybe we need kind of take a good look at CSLAC, what it's doing, and do that not during a CSLAC meeting, but maybe a workshop where we talk about, okay, like, is this committee serving us in the way that we thought it would to start with? Is this committee something that we want to have? Because I could see the benefits, and I could see the pressure on staff, which is a real heavy duty pressure. And it's, let's just say this is not a service or committee that is popular out there with a lot of people. So I just wanted to share that. Time for just maybe a review of what and who we are, and either we endorse it and say we're moving forward on the following terms and conditions, or we're going to change this, or we're just going to absorb this work in another service, or we're going to do something different. But I think we're at that point in the history of this committee. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Director Davidoff. So before we close on this and move to 9.3, Director Jackman did touch on we're anticipating a workshop, so perhaps now would be a good time to just readdress the intent and the outcome of that workshop in February. So this conversation can be had in there, I'm assuming, and it may be well placed. If you could just touch on that, Sangeeta or Dan or Paris.
Thank you.
I'll give the conch to Paris.
Thank you, through the chair. Yeah, so it's intended as a mid-budget development process visioning session. So thinking about, it's intended as a time to talk about whether or not CSLAC wants to include the funding for projects in the CSLAC budget. And to support that conversation, to start to think about as a group where the gaps are, what the opportunities are, and think forward into the year 2025 and understand what could the committee do. And it could take a larger scope, as this conversation was included, to include that broader perspective of the future and scope of CSLAC.
Thank you. So there's no motion tied to this. It's to be reviewed and received as information. I'm looking to Director Jackman to make sure I'm traveling down the correct line here. And we're going to then move on to 9.3. And so if you could get that up and ready, and I will address Director Watson is wishing to opt in. Please do so.
Yeah, just for clarification through to staff, is this our February CSLAC meeting, or are you adding a workshop to the schedule as well as the CSLAC February meeting?
Thank you, through the chair. Yes, workshop is probably too formal a word. The intent is really just to have a discussion, facilitate a discussion or a discussion around what is the potential of, what are the projects that need to be addressed in our community, what are we hearing in the community, and it will be included in the CSLAC meeting, so no additional meetings.
Thank you.
Supplemental?
Okay, great, thank you. All right, moving right along, we're just cruising. 9 point.
Director Vandenberg, or Chair.
Yes.
Was staff going to comment on what Director Watson raised regarding the 15% and what I had commented on?
Thank you, through the chair, for the comment. Yes, it's noted, and the comments and suggestions are noted as well. We can bring it forward as an option for consideration when we meet again in February.
Just a question, Shelley, is this being recorded?
No.
Yeah, so hopefully we're taking good notes. All right.
Chair Vandenberg.
Yes, Director Watson.
I'm sorry. We don't like doing this. I just wanted to respond to Director Hewitt and the committee that I was erred in suggesting that we reduce staff allocation when we have an FTE dedicated. That's not actually a discretion we have. So as Director Jackman or someone said, staffing wise, that does get a little more tricky, but there is options if we have room in a budget, not to just fill the gap, but look at other ways to reduce it. So I'll just correct my statement that we can't simply reduce staff time when we have a commitment to that. So my apologies and thank you for the correction. It was Director Hewitt who raised it, sorry.
Great, thank you. It's great that as a group we work to clarify sorts of things of this. Now we will move on. And who are we privileged to have to speak to 9.3, the draft committee bylaw?
Thank you, through the chair. I'll begin just by prefacing with a little bit about the changes that have been made, but also would like to note that Mike Morrison is on the line as well and can speak to specific governance questions. So we weren't able to address this at the December meeting, but it was on the agenda. There have been 2 changes noted or requested by Chair Vandenberg. That is to change the language of climate action to climate environmental stewardship. Both are noted in yellow on the draft bylaw that's attached in your package. There were also in previous discussions requests to align the terms, format, and the content in the committee bylaw. This is with the original terms of reference, and that rather than reduce the amount of meetings, include the 6 meetings and just highlight the discretion of the chair to reduce them as needed. And as well, the committee bylaw, which has which is a movement requested by our corporate administration to simplify language and create consistency across our committees and reduce duplication in referencing our existing policies such as procedures and remunerations. You'll see that overall the intent of CSLAC is still captured within the bylaw, or at least it is intended to be captured within the bylaw, but overall the language has been simplified. And I'll leave it there.
Okay, so we have a report in front of us and we also have the sample of the bylaw. So we will be referring to both of those documents while we continue our conversation. Director Jackman.
Yeah, thanks. So again, just to frame a bit of my mindset before we get to the workshop, which is for February conversation, which is where I think we'll gain some more traction. One, I've always been a big fan on writing stuff down. Here's, half-page, one-pagers. This is a moving target, though, so I'm a little cautious about how much we write down or try and fix. In the slide presentation, there's language such as, for example, and then it says water and energy and all these things. And we sort of go through this. Yes, very good examples. We've had great traction. We're still on the right path with many of those, but they're examples of the broad scope. In the bylaw, I'm concerned the words may become more restrictive and or the words may not be the best place to represent the interests of the regional district as a whole. And I'll explain both. So in the bylaw, it doesn't say, for example, it now says, the committee provides recommendations to the board on regional initiatives related to, doesn't say as examples, energy resilience, food, ag, drinking water, watershed protection, indigenous relationship building, and climate and environmental stewardship. That is specific. That's not where we started. And that's why I brought my earlier comments up. Those are 4 examples. So out of those, I'd give energy a check mark, not double check mark, because we're all learning enough about our own energy consumption and options and the cost of our decisions and stuff. So, but yeah, we need to still, I think, lead on food and ag. We need to lead hard on water. So I view those as not a given that we're going to continue doing all of those, but some other think, yeah, let's continue as example, being in heart. I am very concerned, and I've raised this point before, and I don't want it to be taken the wrong way. This is not all of this. This is 13 of 20 of us. This should not be the home of Indigenous relationship building. For example, today, real time, Parks and Recreation is probably the lead entity in deep conversation about land and land use, because we're going outside of the safe and secure boundaries of municipalities into the great wild up country and lakes and water. So I don't see that kind of specific, this is the place where this happens as appropriate. It's dishonoring 7 of our members of the board by saying this is where that conversation takes place and makes the recommendations. Not, for example, maybe it says the recommendations. So I think we need to do a little bit of work on loosening the language to say such as or historical. Those are difficult things to put in a bylaw. I think Paris's presentation was the right place for that to be. This has to be a little more generic. And I'm not sure how we're going to get there with 13 of us all weighing in. I'd rather have it as a conversation in February. I appreciate Director Vandenberg has gone through lots of stuff. Director Popoff does this. He's very specific with comments. He made a comment about your reserves recovery, doing his homework over Christmas. That's great. But highlighting in 1 or 2 changes or highlighting this and that is very different than having a conversation with them.
Director Watson, I do have you on the list, but I'll ask Sangeeta to respond to Director Jackman.
So through the chair, yeah, I agree. Using those as examples may be a better way of articulating that. But on the Indigenous relations, really, for example, you use parks as an example. That relationship started with the Kootenay Lake Partnership and then has expanded out. Otherwise, it was previously transactional. So this is more on that level, is to build that relationship. We're going to be doing, and we're starting to evolve that now in other services. So just highlighting that here is not intended to say that other services aren't doing that, but really the relationship with the Tanaka and the Yakanuki really was initiated through Kootenay Lake Partnership as a non-transactional relationship initially, just to clarify.
Supplemental. We have many more Indigenous groups than Taha.
Absolutely.
And so there's a huge transactional element if you were sitting in Ainsworth hearing the expectation of setbacks and the like. So I wouldn't say things are non-transactional. Maybe at this level it might not look at that, but when you dig in, that's what we are as people, as humans. We are very highly transactional. I just want to honor the experience and the needs and what's going on with the entire board. And it's a much bigger picture than Kootenay Partnership. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you. Director Watson and then Popoff.
Thank you. I'll echo what Dr. Jackman said as highlights for me, but I'm going to maybe phrase it a different way. There's a couple terms. This is a bylaw we're discussing. So when we're talking bylaws are the legal documents that state what does this service do. This is a committee bylaw, so what does this committee do? I do find two of the indications challenging. Number one, it says regional projects, but we're not a regional committee. We're 13 of 20. So again, I go back to my concerns that I'm not saying is any specific person's issue or problem to fix, but it is a problem. So I know areas can leave and then it leaves us short, and we're talking regional issues without the region as a whole. So I still maintain that that's a concern for me. They're not regional projects if we're not all involved in them or able to discuss them. Sorry, scratch that last comment. What I'll focus on is the Indigenous Nations one. Regardless on if it started with the KLP, this committee bylaw is now and into the future what we're doing. And Indigenous relations, unless that's one of our projects, that should not be something identified in a committee bylaw. This committee is not working on Indigenous relationships. We're not having Indigenous members come to this committee and work on a relationship with us. The board as a whole does that. And so this is where the language and the work of CSLAC further articulates my concerns over siloing and how overcomplicated things get. In my ideal world, all 20 of us would be a part of this. We don't have to worry about, are we addressing the full region? Yeah, because we're all here. Indigenous relationships could be led by something like that, because then we would have a space for it from a relationship perspective. It's not how this committee is structured. So those are my two concerns with this as a bylaw. I do appreciate creating a bylaw opposed to a terms of reference. That's a little more clear. That's good. My last comment is just that the highlights from Director Vandenberg were covering the word that he wanted changed. Can I assume the word being covered is climate? Because I can't actually see the word.
No, it was climate. It was climate action. Action was taken out. Climate and environmental stewardship remain.
Okay, thank you. That was just my note for clarification. But overall, Indigenous relationships within this bylaw is, I don't think, appropriate.
Okay, so staff is looking at me with piercing. I think they want to have something to say here at this point. Before I take you, Walter, I'll allow staff to respond.
Thank you through the chair. It's just offering a comment about the Indigenous relationship building, because it's something that we discussed as well. Is it appropriate to put into a bylaw? And part of the discussion, just to share where we were coming with it, is that in when we receive the board strategic plan, we have an interpretation, and we have to read into it, and we have to try to interpret in how we operationalize what it is that you want us to do when it comes to the different items that show up in your strategic plan. One of those items that was of importance comes out of DRIPA that BC has adopted. That's feeding itself into EDMA. It's feeding itself into other pieces of legislation as well. So for us, in trying to understand what you wanted us to do, one idea that we wanted to offer through this bylaw is maybe as a board, not only is this being addressed at the board level, but you're making a decision that at each committee, when you're going to be reviewing bylaws, you're going to say, building Indigenous relations is an important piece to do in each committee. So this might be the first bylaw that you choose to do this in. It may not. But we did want to offer it for discussion, and it is from your strategic plan in that piece where how do we operationalize that as an organization?
Good comment. Supplemental, Director Watson?
Thank you. I do appreciate that understanding, and I won't pretend like Indigenous relationship building is clear or, black and white. It's definitely not. That's a bad pun now, I'm sorry. But I think in a committee bylaw, to me, that says we are directly involved in relationship building as a committee. And the further concern with that is that there's 13 of 20 of us. So we already have an issue with siloed relationships, in Indigenous relationships between our services. So I'm concerned this is further siloing that. And it gives the impression that we are building relationships. If the consideration is that, or if the intention is that every time we review a project, we're considering Indigenous relationships, that's acceptable, but not quite how I read this.
Thank you. Director Papa.
Thank you, Chair. When I read duties of the commission or the committee, okay, I see energy, food and agriculture, drinking water, and then the rest. One thing that's missing there, from my point of view, is housing. Housing is a very important factor throughout the province area, and I'm told it falls in within the planning department. That's a certain aspect, but we do have societies that we can support. So I would like to see some consideration of housing, not establishing a housing service through the regional district, but support other societies that are working on housing. An example would be the housing society that's working with the village of New Denver, the village of Spokane. They can utilize some support from this committee. And there might be other areas that have housing societies within the regional district that could use their support to more or less, like I said, not necessarily establishing a housing service, but work with them to provide them support in their ventures for affordable housing.
Great, thank you. So I had some comments on this as well. And I guess when I look at the opportunities that will be lasered into a bylaw, energy resilience is something that I kind of wonder about. I don't know how much control or opportunity we have around that. It's a complex issue. On the second item, food and agriculture, to me, food systems and agriculture makes more sense. I don't know that we really can impact food per se, but food systems we do. I do agree with the comments around Indigenous relation building, Director Watson, and I am familiar with our requirements for DRIPA and the non-DRIP, which, by the way, is still voluntary, but I still believe that it's important to work on developing those relationships and partners going forward. But it's not all up to us. And so I'm reluctant to have that built into the bylaw at this time. And the last thing that I noticed is there an opportunity to ensure that preparation and presentation of a business case on any initiatives as approved by the committee resides in here? Because it's not. When we have an understanding that business cases will be the manner in which we consider things going forward, but it doesn't reside in the bylaws. So I'm just wondering if it's that opportunity. So those are kind of my nutshell comments. And I am looking forward to the workshop, because this gets to be massaged, or not the workshop, but the next gathering, because this gets to be massaged again as we think this through. So I do have piercing eyes, and I will start with Director Manning.
Thank you. And I return that piercing eye gaze to you. Well, the things that you mentioned specifically that are not entirely up to us, I would say that they are not entirely up to us, because the big things only happen when the 100 or 1,000 small steps have been taken. And I think that this committee has been cognizant of that in its time that I have observed, that we know that any of the individual actions that we take will not in themselves change the direction of the world, but they build toward that. And that's, that goes along with when I say we're the dreamers, we're the thinkers, we're the big picture place here. At the same time, I absolutely hear you that in a bylaw, we do need to be specific about what we're saying and trying to accomplish. And so the difference between food and agriculture and food systems in agriculture is something that I would absolutely support, because it does, saying food systems is a better way of describing what we're looking at. Yeah, I just wanted to get that in there, that we are responsible for some of that stuff.
Right. Thank you. Did you wish to hop in? No, you're good. I'm looking around the table. I don't see anything further. We have both documents that we are tabling right now, being it the bylaw and the report. I am comfortable and Director Jackman, I'll ask for your help, Director Popoff too. I would like to see these move to February for further consideration. So I think it's a little bit early today to provide exactly what we feel comfortable in with their bylaw. Director Jackman, go ahead.
So, yeah, I would move we refer the report on the draft committee bylaw to the February meeting.
Okay, need a seconder, Popoff. Okay, and before I move on, no further comments. I'm hearing something.
Sorry, just on referral?
Yes. Oh, yeah, right. No, I don't get to ask for that. Never mind. All right, thank you for that. Is that what you're going to say, Director Watson?
No, I have a process question on referral.
Please go ahead.
Thank you. I'm just clarifying because there was no motion in this agenda to do anything with these, so I had assumed they would come back in February regardless. I'm just verifying that.
Okay, and then procedurally, I am getting agreement head shakes, so we don't need a motion, but I do know that Director Popoff is looking at me intently.
So if I may, Chair, we have made a lot of comments here. So I hope staff is writing down the comments to bring back to the February meeting when we get into the real discussion on the bylaw and possible adoption.
I agree, and it's unfortunate that we don't take the opportunity to record this for the benefit of staff, which is maybe something that we can talk about in the future. All right. So at this point, we think we're safe to move on to the next item, which is 9.2. No, pardon me, 9.1. That is Rural Mobility Community Advisory Committee. And is Alex here? You're Alex. How are you doing, Alex? I'm Alex. Good to meet you. Please continue, or please take over.
Maybe I'll just begin and Alex can jump in.
And why don't you do that first?
Thank you through the chair. So for the purpose of the committee, this was an item that was on the December agenda. It is a bylaw that we're looking to have passed and approved. So it's come back to the committee for consideration. We did receive some comments from Director Vandenberg, which have been incorporated into the bylaw. We've also added, or Alex has added, additional information on how does the Regional Mobility Working Groups, how does the work support and align with existing RDCK work? Namely, how does it work with the transit service? Both Tom and Mike are available online to respond to specific questions related to either governance or to how this mobility working group could it work with transit services. And Alex has also prepared slides that can provide background information if needed. Alex, would you like to?
Okay, Alex, please carry on.
Yeah, so.
And welcome, Tom.
Yeah, through the chair, I have some slides to provide some background information if there's questions regarding the mobility working group. And Shelley, if you want to bring those up, I can speak to some of them.
So one, did I need, like, the new one from today that you said?
Yes.
Okay. One.
Yes, so at the December meeting, there's some questions around the rural mobility working group, and we moved it to January to have further time to discuss. And I'd just like to open that up to directors to discuss if there's any questions.
I'll take a question from Director Jackman.
Sure, thank you, through the chair. It was good to have the earlier report, and I saw there were a lot of interested groups that jumped on this to say, yeah, we will provide community voice input. That's nice. I think I made a comment previously that a lot of those groups are based or partially based awfully close to where we're sitting right now. Maybe not completely representative of the entire regional district, and that is necessary. It's actually going to do what we hope it's going to do. So in the bylaw, which seems pretty good, under membership 0.51, it says, will include a minimum of 6 community members, all of whom must reside within the RDCK. I think we also have to state and must be representative of, and then how you work that, the entire regional district, or must be physically located across a representative area of the regional district. Me, that's a necessity. How we work that out, this doesn't have a motion on this agenda now, even though there's a bylaw here, but I think that's very important. The other thing I'm just going to make a bit of tongue in cheek. This is bylaw number 3000 or whatever. Came up reasonably fast. It's still like our bylaw for the committee for the environmental $15 parcel tax. You could almost take a bylaw like this and print one that we need for that committee to have the proper technical review committee and the participants of the anyway. This is so short and simple. I love it. I'd like to see the short and simple one done for one of our other initiatives. Been waiting for a bylaw for a couple of years, but it must be representative of the entire regional district. However you want to describe or mandate that geographic distribution.
Thank you, Director Jackman. Alex, go ahead. You wanted to respond?
Yeah, through the chair, we
Yeah, certainly want to represent the whole region, and we took the opportunity to send out a survey to all directors a few weeks ago. And we're hoping that each director can take the time to fill out the questionnaire just so that we're not missing any voices from around the rural area specifically.
I'd like to comment on that, Alex. Yes, I remember seeing that survey, but I sent a note back to you saying I didn't understand the context in which I was to participate in the survey. So now I do. And, but I think it's important to give a little bit of a context feed in, because we're getting so many surveys lately. It's kind of hard to stay up on top of, what does my head need to be on this one? So just, you got my comments on that. Director Watson.
Yeah, thank you. I don't remember the survey. Maybe I filled it in. If you could resend it, especially if it's 2 weeks ago, that falls into the Christmas. Who knows what came through. My main comment is just, and I did ask this last month. I don't recall the answer. I still don't feel clear on it. This is a short-term project, rural mobility funded with a grant. I don't know why we're creating a governance committee for something that is short-term, that is not directly connected to a core service. So my primary question is, why are we doing that? And why does the working group model not work for this? Secondary, I do want to note that if this is rural mobility where, aka there lacks transit options, there's no representation from our most rural communities. And that's a serious concern on the current structure and the committee members. So I guess 2 questions in there. I think Director Jackman referenced the rural component already. But primarily, please explain to me why we are creating a CAC for a short-term grant-funded project. Thank you.
Okay, the question has been posed. Who would like to? Mike. Where's Mike? Oh, you're blocked, Mike. You have to wait. There's somebody crossing the street in front of you. Go ahead, Mike.
Okay, yeah, through the chair, when this originally landed on my desk from Paris and Alex, it was conceived as basically an ongoing initiative, and with the information that was provided about the work that this group would be doing and how they would relate to other parts of our governance structure, the Community Advisory Committee format did appear to be the best fit, and using a template that we've used for other types of advisory committees, notably the water CACs. Now, that being said, if it is a short-term thing, we could look at other options there, but part of what we're trying to achieve with our governance is some consistency and standardization. When we convene any kind of body, there should be a fairly common set of rules around that, and the CAC bylaw upon which this is based really provides a basic structure to outline what is in scope and out of scope, how the meetings will run, the levels of formality that will be included in the meetings. And, administratively, there's lots of advantages to having this in a bylaw, even if it's just, community membership and a short-term thing. That being said, governance is entirely at the discretion of the board, and you can direct whatever, whatever format you want for this committee, and staff will respond with that. But this is staff's recommendation as the best approach at this time with the information that we have.
Director Watson, did you have anything supplemental, perhaps comment on the format that Mike just suggested?
Yes, thank you. I don't disagree with the format. The CAC format is great. I really appreciate it for water systems, things where we have assets, things where we have long-term commitments. But as far as I understand it, and I reviewed the budget again, the Rural Mobility Project is a short-term grant-funded program. So when we're creating a committee with a bylaw that is in perpetuity, that suggests that this is now going to become a regular budget item. My understanding on this project was do some research with the committee, figure out what recommendations would be, then we'd consider those recommendations as per either actions we would take or delegate to see other organizations do. I did not see this becoming a core program. And so that's my concern. CAC model is great. My question, I guess, should then be, is this now a core program and not a short-term project? So that's where I have concerns. CAC model is fantastic. I just don't see how we're applying it to something that's short term.
Mike, did you wish to respond?
Yeah, so based on the feedback from when this landed with the committee in December, I believe Director Vandenberg made the comment that we should have a sunset clause for this bylaw within the bylaw. So it is noted in there under Section 8 in the bylaw. The last note, number 9, says add in a sunset clause. So in effect, once it's being determined how long this committee should be in effect for, that will be written into the final bylaw before adoption.
And supplemental, Director Watson.
It just seems like a lot of extra work for a short-term project. Not disagreeing with the CAC model. It's just a lot of extra work on our part. We could just take recommendations from a committee and that would be less work, but I'm not staff doing that. So thank you. I remain not interested in this bylaw. Interested in the working group, yes.
All right, thank you. I will now opt in. This kind of struck me as we're going through it. I really felt it was primarily urban in nature. I'm wondering how necessary it is for rural communities to have this step going into it. A lot of key phrases jumping out at me: low carbon transportation, reduction of greenhouse gases, and that sort of thing. I don't know that I'm comfortable with all that right now. I don't sit well with the intent of this work. And I'll also comment on some of I did do a little research on the members of the current committee, very much Nelson based, very much green based. I wonder about equal representation in the rule when it comes to even our agriculture, our farmers, our chamber committee, any of those. As I went through and I researched every one of these members, so that's kind of my takeaway on this: is it needs to be a little bit more balanced before I'm feeling a little bit more okay or optimistic with it. But at the end of the day, what is the problem we're trying to solve? The other comment I had is I appreciate and respect the work that Tom Duell does. And for me, being in the rule, he has the knowledge to know what will work and what doesn't work out in the rule. And when I think about rule, I think about our Highway 3A. There's nothing that this group can point out that 3A can do to accommodate the mobility and this sort of thing if Modi isn't buying in and willing to re-engineer and widen the road, so to speak. So there's a lot of, in my mind, there's a lot of conversation opportunities that could be had, but I don't know that I'm ready to support a bylaw. And I think that the scope of this project needs to be kind of realigned more towards the rural side. And those are the things that struck me when I went through it. So I would welcome any feedback on my feedback. Alex.
Through the chair, just in regards to the first point around the metrics with carbon, we responded to that in the draft and took it out. And as per your recommendation, we just left the piece on environmental impacts. The second point was on membership. So again, that's where we started with a steering committee, which was just folks that had indicated a high level of interest and capacity. And so that's where the steering committee was formed, but we're really hoping to expand that membership as per recommendations of the directors. And I just sent out the survey again, so hopefully anyone that didn't get a chance to fill it out will fill that out now.
Thanks, Alex. I have Director Hewitt and Director Page. Sorry, Director. Go ahead.
Okay, thank you. Through the chair, my question is also regarding membership. Under 5.3, there's exclusionary language in there. It says RDCK electoral area directors are not members but may participate. So if it is housed in S100, it should be all regional district directors Otherwise, and the same with the survey. I didn't fill it out because it seemed obviously targeted to EA directors, not to municipal directors. So we've got to be, I think, careful with that if you want municipal, because I could give you names of organizations and I'm sure Director Watson would come up with the same ones because we're so closely aligned geographically. But that's just my comment, that it does sound like it's to the exclusion of municipal directors.
Thank you, Director Hewitt. Director Page?
Yeah, just quickly, I want to be careful just about, I think it's important inside of membership to think about the expertise you want around the table, as well as looking for, key areas of expertise wherever they may land. I would remind rural area, not in the city of Nelson itself. So we always have to remember how much people associate just the city of Nelson. So if this is a discussion and interviews about where lines fall when it comes to who has residents on its council.
Even though this is LGCAP, local government climate action plan funding, is part of it, I see a whole lot more is going to come out of this than low carbon transportation. This is the networking part. We've had how many conversations, especially just look at how much EBCM last September was around, medical transportation. Are we using Hope Air? Are we using Angel flights? Are we going to have better ground transportation connectivity to and from? There's so many things in play right now with getting from A to B for so many reasons that regardless of what you put in this bylaw, and these are the more simple, the better, they're bringing voices from near and far. And whether or not it's the intent of the main purpose of this project in 2 years with this particular funding silo, it will help us grow a lot more. It will connect people right across the regional district. So I'm not looking at this as a low carbon thing. I'm looking at this as we've got some real fundamental problems getting from A to B. It is a social issue and a health issue. Whether it's high or low carbon, interesting, Tom almost made the comment, I thought he's going to elaborate on Dual, about, if it's 80 to 130 bucks per trip in BC Transit, that's not low carbon because it's the big bus, right? But when it's $15 to $20 a trip like in Nelson, that is low carbon because there's 25 people in that same diesel bus burning so much. So low carbon, I'm just kind of pushing off to this side. Let's figure out how to network better and solve the social and health issues. And this is just a way to grab the money under a heading to have a better conversation, more wholesome conversation that we've been able to have over the last few years. So I'm kind of good with this for 2 years. But I want to make sure, and it doesn't have to be 6 people. I'm not talking about excluding any really active, knowledgeable Nelson group. I'm talking about including more on top of that. The staff will come up with a number. You might say, well, 12 is getting hard to manage. 20 of us that's, herding cats or whatever you may or may not refer to us as. Maybe 20 is way too many. We have to be a little more inclusive without losing the expertise of Nelson Car Share. They know how to do it. Anyway, there's a lot of benefits that could come out of this if we look at it.
Thank you, Director Jackman. Yes, I am seeking direction on this. Director Watson.
Thank you for that. I'm sorry, I forgot I had another question, and that's just in the report it indicated that this would be a committee of CSLAC. And I just wanted to clarify, to me, that seems if this committee goes forward or this bylaw goes forward to create this committee, it should be a committee of the board, given CSLAC is not covering all of the transportation considerations. And it's, again, a defined service. So can I just get clarity on that? I'm just reading the bylaw again to see if it indicates, and it does state that unless the board requests certain things. So I'm assuming this is a committee of the board, not of CSLAC. Thank you.
May I take that one?
Go ahead, Mike.
Yeah, through the chair. Yeah, it's incorrect to refer to this as a subcommittee of another committee. All of our committees under bylaw or for any reason are committees of the board. So I think the correct way for that to be presented would be the the input gathered through this committee would be received by CSLAC. It could be, transit-related feedback coming from this group could be routed to the transit committees, but CSLAC, is proposed to be the primary place for the discussions for the work that's coming out of this committee. And we do have precedent elsewhere in the organization, the water community advisory committees. The feedback from that is received by the Water Services Committee, but those meeting notes that they prepare also go to the board, and this would be a similar situation.
Supplemental?
Yes, please.
Thank you. So a couple notes. One is I appreciate that they are a committee of the board. I don't necessarily take issue that the minutes would come to CSLAC, but I do not see it as clear as the water committee receiving CAC because they are all water systems. There's nothing different than what they're doing. That's really clear. This committee has things indicated in it that would not be under CSLAC. So that's where, again, I'm seeing this kind of confusing redundancy that I've been referencing a few times in this meeting today. So how that worked out, I'm not sure. I also, when we originally looked at the grant for the rural mobility project, I understood it to be a lot more about those active transportation, those rural areas where transit, Area D, we have one bus a week. And so I thought it was going to be addressing how do we make those connections for areas where transit is just not efficient or effective? What are the other options? I thought this was more of that work. I see in the committee bylaw that it definitely references all sorts of things they could be giving us recommendations on for transportation opportunities. If it improves the ability to get to your medical appointments, that's great. But how are they going to understand the funding model for transit when I myself am still figuring that one out because it's only our second year actually getting to go through those budgets with our new committee. So I get the intention. I get where this is trying to go. I see a lot of confusion coming out of this. So out of all that, if someone can clarify for me, who's going to differentiate where the minutes go depending on what the recommendations and the topics were? And also, are we veering outside of what the rural mobility project was originally grant funded for? And last note, if we do move to adopt this bylaw, please put in that sunset clause. Thank you.
Great. So I'm looking to staff for a response to Director Watson. What say you?
Go ahead.
So we've had through the chair, we've had pretty extensive conversations with Tom about how certain pieces of what's found in the bylaw might go to the different transit committees. The West Kootenay Transit Committee, Kootenay West Transit Services Committee. So we have some language on that, and if it's helpful, I can show a slide on that. And if not, we could maybe include that language in the bylaw. It's also in the report. Yeah.
Okay, so I'm looking at staff now and asking, what is the direction here? What are you looking for from this group today? Because I don't see where we're going to be approving any bylaw. I see there's an opportunity to reflect on some of the comments, to tighten up the bylaw to make it a little bit stronger to what the intent of this group is.
Through the chair. So we brought the bylaw back for further discussion, for further comment. We'll bring it back again with those revisions in February. And at that time, we'll propose adoption.
Okay.
If there is further discussion at that time, then we can bring it back again, and we'll continue to do that until there's agreement and we can adopt it.
Okay.
This time it's for discussion.
For clarity, that which you're sending out for a survey, Alex, is the intent or the hopeful outcome of that is to tighten all this up for February? Trying to give a sense to those participating in the survey, how they might be able to use that as a communication tool for you.
So we're taking notes today for the bylaw. The survey that I sent is primarily for the direction of the group and the membership and the project scope of work. And so that as well will be taken into account in the steering committee meetings.
Okay.
If I'm doing, yeah, go ahead. Just to build on what Alex was saying, or through the chair, thank you. The questionnaire or the survey is in response to what we heard from CSLAC in December that was questioning the membership and seeking to ensure inclusivity. The questionnaire is the way that we're collecting that input. So it's an opportunity for everyone to speak into that with the clarification that Director Hewitt gave around municipal versus electoral areas that will take in an update on the survey. But that is the singular use for that questionnaire.
So inclusivity. So as a respondent to that survey, I will context my response by saying, I am looking at this through a rural lens, and then go on for your benefit. Correct, Alex?
Yes.
Okay. And maybe some observations about rural, urban intermix and those opportunities. Okay. Just clarity around that. I'm looking around the table, and there is no action required on 9.1. What are we on now? 9.1. 9.1. Okay. Thank you for that discussion. We will now move along to 10.1. And as soon as we have a 5-minute break. Yes, indeed.
Annenberg.
Yes.
Sorry, there are two things on that. Just before you close off that conversation, I do very much think if we're going to edit the draft committee bylaw, we should include where does this committee report to and based on what. I do think that should be in the bylaw because I don't expect anyone to hold that institutional history just in their mind. And we've definitely lost track when it's not in a bylaw. And further, I do believe there was a motion in this agenda to adopt. So if that is the case, then no, there was no motion. My correction. Never mind. That was it. Thank you.
Thank you. And to those online, we will take a pause for 5 minutes and ready, set, go.
And we leverage all this time and effort.
Okay, because Amy's not here, I get that. Who's that? You know, breaking anything. And I see that Amy is waving. I think that means she has something to say.
I was just telling you I'm here. I had my camera off because I'm lighting my fire, but I'm here.
Okay, all right. And I guess it's probably Newell, Davidoff, and Hewitt have had to leave, I should point out.
And
Hans Cunningham
Hewitt's still there.
has had to depart as well. I hope it's not a trend for my chairmanship going forward.
She's still here.
Hewitt is still here, yes, indeed. Sorry about that, Susan.
Still have a quorum.
Do we still have a quorum?
Yes.
How many do we need for four?
I don't know.
13 of us.
I think only Vanessa does.
We are
Two, Davidoff and Cunningham left.
Davidoff and Cunningham have left.
8, we had 9. Yeah, we're good. Yeah, we're good.
Are we good, Director Popoff? All right.
Great, thanks.
There's no
You're a
voting.
good policeman. That's it. All right, thank you very much. And we are now going to turn to Tom Newell's gone. So, and we will now turn to new business 10.1. And that is to talk about our 2024 sustainability S105 financial plan. And Sangeeta, I believe, is going to lead the race.
Yes, through the chair, the financial statements that I provided last board meeting, you can just forget about them. Since then, that was pre-Christmas. Since then, an addenda was sent out. And I'm happy to answer any questions or if you want me to speak about a specific item, but as I move along. But first, just want to point out for 2025, we're looking at a requisition of 257,623. We have significant grant funding in this service, some external, some from like mostly external, and then some from just a little bit there from LGCAP and from the service. And so where we see grant funding right now is located in the Watershed Security Fund and Watershed Project under, I don't know if you can see a work order, but it's under that, those initiatives that are related to watershed governance and security and natural asset management. So we have the Yakanuki, like there's funding, and Paris can speak to this if you have further questions. There was funding received for a total of, I believe, 149. I'm just trying to find the amount. 150. And that, I can let Paris speak to that a little bit more about what's happening with that funding. That's also distributed in the expenses, that funding, to show you how it will be utilized. And I'll let Paris talk to that when we get there.
Okay, before we go, I'm a little lost.
Okay.
Are we on 10.1 talking about 2024 financials?
Sorry.
Okay, so we're now into 10.2?
Yeah, I just clarified that the financial statements that were sent pre-Christmas
For 10.1?
they are no longer valid because.
So we have nothing.
So, yeah, what you have is the addenda that was sent today with the budget as it is now for 2025. And so if you want to, I didn't check to see if everybody received that addenda and has
I
that
haven't
budget.
checked my email since I've been here. So,
It should be an e-scribe. It should be.
So Director Jackman, is it the appropriate attachment in eScribe now?
I think so. I'm on eScribe. There's some changes I see, especially like prior year surplus, which made no sense previously.
Yes.
So that's a good sign.
So now, just so that we're all together, we are in 10.2. We're looking at the 2025 draft financial plan for S105. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay, thank you. Okay.
Sorry, can I further request that if you're naming specific line items, use the line item number, and then that makes it a little easier to follow? Thank you.
Okay, I was through the chair.
Yep.
at this point, I'm not sure what you want me to talk about, but how I was approaching this budget was by projects. And so I was talking specifically about a project that Paris is involved with in Yakanuki, Amakis, which is in the Creston Valley, to do a water, and it's grant funded to do a water sustainability plan for the area. We received $150,000 for that project. I'll let Paris speak to it in more detail. Maybe I'll stop there and let her speak to that project and explain how that funding is going to be distributed. You will see it under you'll see it under various accounts in the submission that you have received. But I'll let Paris speak to it, and if you need more details, I can provide that. Go ahead, Paris.
Before you do, Paris, can I so we have this in front of us today. This is what you're presenting for 2025 draft. This is all new to us, so we've not had a chance to really absorb this. Are you looking to then take this to the board for approval right away? Thank you. No is the answer, so we'll see this again in February. Thank you very much.
Sorry, Chair, we lost connection with the director. I'm sorry to interfere in the conversation, but when we do that, we have to pause the meeting. Director Graham is back, and sorry, I was trying to let you know that she lost her internet, so we just need to make sure she's reconnected. So
Hi, Cheryl, are you okay now? You're all good?
Sorry, yeah, I missed the conversation on the budget. So I don't expect you to go through it. I can read the budget. I can see there's a 20% increase requested in requisitions, which to me seems really high. Sorry. Anyways, that's my only comment.
Okay, we didn't really get into it a whole lot, Cheryl, so I don't think you missed a lot. Your keen eyes have probably picked up more than what we've talked about. So I'm now going to give the conch to Paris.
Thank you, through the chair. Yes, so this is a draft financial plan for receipt, as Sangeeta was outlining. And of note, are under income are the grants, which is one line item 43020, which is noted under the 2025 budget 149785. $115 was spent in 2024. So the total grant is 150,000, but what we carry over into 2025 is 149. Under 43025, you'll see 200,000 there. I believe that includes some KLP. It also includes, I won't speak to that. Okay. So the 149 is just related to the watershed governance work that we're doing in the Creston Valley, which we've spoken about at this committee before.
And then further on, there are other grants there. You'll see that in your e-scribe, the tabs break out the work orders, and it gives you an idea of what is allocated to the watershed security project, what's allocated to Kootenay Lake Partnership, and then what's in general administration for CSLAC, which is a tab, the first or second tab, I believe. And basically the requisition for this year is $257,623. That's what we're looking at right now. I will have to make a few adjustments. I just noted a couple of things that I need to adjust, but that's what we're looking at for this year. And it's an increase from last year, which was $210,000. So yeah, I'll leave it there. I'm not sure exactly what you want. I think you need time to review this, but if you have any specific questions about any of these budget items, I understand that you received it at the last minute here today. So,
all right, so I'm going to start with a speaker's list on what we have in front of us. Director Jackman and then Papa.
Thanks, Chair. Through the chair, the e-scribe attachment doesn't allow us to open tabs. So please ensure that you send us a spreadsheet with the ability to open the tabs and see the work orders. Matthew sends us those all the time.
The first two tabs, we can't send an Excel spreadsheet through eScribe, so I switched it to a PDF. So the first two tabs
are there. By the end of the week, you shall be receiving all the budgets, I believe, the draft budgets. And so we can definitely email you the spreadsheet.
No, sorry, through the chair. No, I don't want any misinformation going out regarding timing of budgets. They'll be received in a week and a half. So 2 weeks before your special board meeting for budget, that will be delivered. The draft budgets are not coming out next week.
Okay, Director Jackman, continue.
Yeah, thanks. So, yeah, maybe it just suffices to say I can't see what you're referring to.
I understand.
I can kind of understand what the pieces
Now I understand.
So, this budget, I'd like to see a little more scrutiny in. And I thought when I was at home, because I have every book for 16 years, literally. And I've done this for the fire services. I've done 3 to 5 year averages on line items because that's necessary when you start to see huge increases. At this point, it's necessary. We have too many line items like directors, mileage, travel, basic travel, education training is probably not so bad. Membership, new subscriptions. We have budget items, $1,320 allowed, actual $134%, but showing an inflated cost for next year. And that's across the board in the whole middle block of the expenses. So what I'd like to see is assurance that, like I've asked our fire chiefs and other managers over the years, that somebody's done a 3 to 5 year average. 5 years of it's nothing's changed. And then, yeah, you have to allow inflation. If there's something happened, when I say 3 to 5, if something totally new out of the province came that we now have to do something differently, new education requirement, police speech, something changed, yeah, it'll be maybe last year's number plus inflation. But we need to see those averages because locked in there might be $10,000, $20,000 that is kind of padding to the budget that's not really looking at what we need to run the service. And at the end of the day, yeah, some will be higher, some will be lower. We can make a financial plan amendment if we have to later. But I can't start a budget with a 22.5%, 22.6% lift without seeing close scrutiny on all those middle items. Under salaries, that hasn't changed. It's like a 6.6% lift, and I think some of the other budgets are showing 3.3. So changes to FTE, new positions, something unique, promotions, maybe there's something there I'm missing, or 6.6, an old number, is 3.3 or some other number, the average number being used today. And of course, if that number is adjusted, then payroll benefits, everything else moves in accordance with that. So sooner rather than later, I'd like to see a budget that's been scrutinized, specifically the salaries line, all the middle lines. And if I can see in Excel where I can open the tabs, yeah, I do that every year. I go into the detail as much as I can. And sorry, my other previous question was, how the heck did we get $109,344 in prior year surplus? But I see it's gone, so I'm going to pretend I never saw that.
I can, through the chair, I can respond, like, the surplus is actually grant funds that are being carried forward. Yeah. And so, yeah, they were just carried forward. And regarding the director's expenses, your actuals for 2024 in expenses was around, I would say about 14,000. That's what I'm seeing in the actuals right now. So I will have a look at those, and that's why I left the number as is right now. I'm seeing previously there were less directors traveling here. Words are escaping me. There were less trips to the head office for CSLAC meetings. So that's why we have a bit of a savings in that director travel expense. But today I'm seeing that majority of them, or half of the directors are here, so we'll see what you want. I will take your advice on what you want to reduce that to. I will reduce it in the meanwhile to reflect what the actuals were last year and maybe a couple of thousand more, just to keep things fresh.
Supplemental, sure. This is the point of where I say 3 to 5. If something's changed, like ability or willingness to travel, yes, it's different. And I didn't ask about the director's stipend. The travel, we need a short-term adjustment, but all the other ones, there's so many other things in there, whether it's education and training, membership, admin, postage, supplies, those items. I mean, the whole list should be scrutinized with a 3 to 5 year average, not one or two things, not my cost, all the costs, because that's just prudent. that every so many years you reset, and you know you're not just kind of floating $10,000 or $20,000 in a budget, or you'll never reach on average any of those numbers. That's the point, not to pick one or two items, but absolutely, if there's been a short-term change, like our ability or willingness to attend in person, leave the number where it needs to be. If it's been building a little bit of a slush fund, please pare it back before you ask us to look at a whole lot more numbers on February 3rd and try to grapple with that. I don't need to be asking those little questions on February 3rd. I need to be asking the big questions about, should we continue to do things? Or should we do something different?
Thank you. I appreciate that feedback. It was really difficult because there was a few years there with the pandemic that things were a little off. So when I did look at those numbers, I projected back to like almost to 2018, just to see pre-pandemic what the numbers look like. So, and things have shifted even since then, because now we're doing more of the hybrid, and utilizing less of the resources that we needed in the past for traveling. Yeah. So.
Okay, so Popoff's up, Watson's on deck, and just to reiterate what I heard from Director Jackman, which I agree with, it's the big numbers we want to have the conversation about around. Not the 3 to 5 is good. It's the big numbers we want to have a conversation around that we want to be able to see the notes off to the side. Director Popoff.
Yeah, so going with the big number that you mentioned is, you know, like I went through this, and I don't know if I'm looking at the right draft financial plan or not, but I see a big jump in 53020, which is admin office supplies and postage, from $1,300 in the budget, and up to date $788. It jumps down to $5,952. And you know, maybe a little bit of an explanation, and then I've got a bunch of others.
Yeah, let's find the line. So
5302030.
yeah, found the line.
020.
Yeah. So I'm seeing administration. So for the budget, so this is common costs. We allocate a certain amount that is common costs that we all share within all our services for what we utilize of supplies for printing, postage, etc. So that number, most of it is common cost. You will, there's $5,000 in there that you may see that is in addition to that. That has been allocated for that project that Paris is working on the Watershed Security Fund with Yakanuki in the Creston Valley. So 5,000 of that grant funding that she mentioned before, 150,000, is going to be utilized for administration, postage, and office supplies. So that's why that number is bumped up. That's grant funded.
Okay, so the next one I've got is communications, 53030. Again, it jumps from 1,200 to 14,000. That's a significant jump.
Yeah. So again, similarly, now see, I wish I had a ruler with me. I should have done that. So communications, yeah, I'm looking at that. So similarly, that one is a common cost, but we also have additional costs that has been allocated for the project that Paris is working on, the Watershed Security Fund. Thank you. That helps. So that would be for the amount. So this is, so 12,500 is for community engagement, protocol, and ceremony. That's been allocated from that grant to communications. It may be the inappropriate line. I have actually made a note of that to say that maybe we put that somewhere else rather than under the communications line. So that's an adjustment that I needed to speak to Paris about, that I need to make. Otherwise, the total budget for communications is 1,900 or 980. My eyes are going all blurred. So that would be the common cost that's in there, 1,980.
Okay, supplemental?
So if you don't mind, I'll go through some of the big items here, and I'm sure some other directors might ask those questions.
Okay.
And I understand there's reasonable explanations for them.
Yes, I'll give you 4 more.
I don't.
Use them wisely.
Thank you, Chair. So contracted services, 54030, and we've got $337,000 and a few odd dollars in there. I'm sure there's a remainder of 4462 website. I really don't understand that. Can you explain that?
Yeah, so through the chair, we received grant funding through, who was the grantor for the watershed security? Real Estate Foundation. So we received grant funding for the watershed security project with Yakanuki through the Real Estate Foundation. We also transferred funding from Community Works for $80,000 for the watershed investigation that we're going to be doing for the Weimar watershed. And in addition to that, we received about 100, and I can't remember the amount, but it's over 100,000 for Kootenay Lake Partnership Project. In addition, we have funding that we will be utilizing to support, what was that? The more contract. Just a second. Yeah, no, that's it. So it's those 3 projects: the Weimar watershed, the watershed security project with Yakanuki, and the Kootenay Lake Partnership are the 3 projects that have received a significant amount of grant funding, which is now allocated either through contracted services and or through other accounts in the budget.
Okay, so it's mostly grant funds that we're receiving. That's in there. So the last one that I've got, with indulgence from the chair, is the consulting fees. It says agrarian analytics consulting for natural asset management plan. Can you elaborate on that? 74,000.
I'll defer that to Paris. She knows what that is about.
Yes, thank you, through the chair. That's for the Weimar Watershed Ports Creek project, where we're doing a natural asset project. And so those are the consulting fees.
So supplemental if I may, on that $80,000 of that is funded by Director Cunningham through his committee works. Yeah.
Correct.
Thank you.
All right. Anything further? You have 2 more.
No.
Okay.
I'm done.
Very good. Director Watson.
Yeah, thank you. So my main questions are, I do appreciate Popoff and Jackman raised most of them, but what I would like to ask, I'm not going to focus on the bigger pieces in terms of the contracts and the grants, because that's essentially money coming in, money going out. But the increase of the budget from 210,000 to 257,000, which is requisition, not grant funding coming in and out. What is that 20+% increase for? And then I have a supplemental.
So through the chair, I think a portion of that would be salaries. But there are some errors that I'm noticing in regards to how, like, for example, there are some amounts that need to be, not errors, but rather adjustments that need to be made to some of the budget lines. And so I'm noting those as I go through this, but at this point, I can't tell you in hard numbers where that, other than salaries, what else could be creating that increase.
Supplemental?
Yeah, so before I would support this, I would need to understand those. If we went with the 3.3% CPI increase, that's still less than what the increase is under salaries. And that is not the 20%. And so I guess I'll just clarify, we're going to get to talk about this again in February before it's just in our overall budget, hopefully. And if we could have the specifics then, I can't support an increase like that without understanding what it's for. Thank you.
Thank you, Ida.
Yeah, a lot of that would be also the 3.3, as you mentioned, the CPI increase that would impact some of the common costs, as well as the IT and general admin fee, I believe, although we have not received those numbers yet.
Supplemental, Director Watson, anything further?
Just clarify that we'll be reviewing this in February and we will have those actuals at that time in terms of ensuring we know what the 20% plus increase is for.
Okay, and I'm seeing nods and understanding. The only question I have is, I just caught a little bit of it, the Real Estate Foundation is the grant providing the monies for, it eludes me right now, but my question is that money just flowed through to Lower Kootenai Band, or is it for actual work invoiced that is being done?
Thank you, through the chair. The application for the funding was a joint application between Yakanuki and the RDCK, and so they're receiving a portion of the funds. We're receiving a portion of the funds, and they are not invoicing us for funds.
So they just get the funds?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
It's their funds that we're receiving on their behalf.
Yeah.
Okay, for the project?
Yes.
Thank you.
And just to highlight through the chair, even the Kootenai Lake Partnership funding, there was a resolution passed at this board that the funding was for the work of the Indigenous cultural analysis on Kootenai Lake. That was received by the Tanaka and Yakanuki, but they asked us to manage that funding. So that's why it's here. It's not necessarily allocated to RDCK, but rather to the project and to the Indigenous nations we're working with.
Thank you. And because you touched on that Kootenai Lake Partnership, because it is at the right table, is there somebody hired to administer, to direct that effort?
Yes, through the chair, there was a big delay in hiring. We had the posting up, and we now have found a candidate, or actually, the contract has been issued to a new facilitator for the group and coordinator. They're right now arranging a meeting for the Kootenai Lake Partnership in the next little while.
Thank you. Director Watson.
Sorry, you caught me eating chocolate.
Share with everybody.
Tomorrow. Just a question on, so when we're doing direct flow throughs and we're not, I guess one question on the 2 flow through grants we just talked about, KLP and the watershed one, are we charging them any administrative fees? And second, if we're not doing that, or even if we are, why is the flow through CSLAC and not through, let's say, general admin if it's a direct flow through?
So through the chair, speak. So yes, we are charging administrative fee for our time as the RDCK to support administering these funds. I believe so is we're recovering that administrative funding from the REF grant for the water security project that we're working with Yakanuki. So in both cases we are. We're also creating a contingency fund in the Kootenai Lake Partnership budget to allow for when the project does get started for any cost overruns.
Supplemental, Director Watson?
Well, there was an additional question in there regarding why the flow through is through CSLAC for both of those in terms, but I guess that's where the administration is. It's just further confusing because Paris's time is 0.25 in general admin and 0.75 in CSLAC, and then further KLP budgeting and whatnot does not go through this committee. So it's just complicated, I guess, is what I'll leave it at, unless anyone wants to clarify and help me get a...
Right, go ahead, Sangeeta.
So for clarification, the flow through for the Kootenai Lake Partnership was a resolution passed by this board. That's why we agreed to act as the fiscal agent for the funding for the Kootenai Lake Partnership that the Yakanuki and Tanaka. That resolution was passed, I believe, 2 years ago by the board. And so in regards to the
Question is, what is it S105 that is flowing through?
Yes.
What service is it flowing
Well,
through?
this service, S105, not through general admin. Because that was this is where the project sits. The Kootenai Lake Partnership sits here in this service. This is where it's managed.
Watson?
Yeah, sorry, I knew we passed a motion to do the grant to do the flow through. I wasn't asking about that. It was just understanding because Paris's time is split. Never mind, just move on. I don't think I'll get a clear answer. It's a confusing one. KLP is very confusing. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm looking around the room. I'm staring at people like they stare at me, and I see nothing up on the screen. So anything further, Director Jackman, and perhaps we will move on.
So without being able to open text, right? Without adjusting any of the little things that are all important, everything matters. The big question mark here is we received money to spend last year, we didn't spend all of it. That should have rolled it forward. That's what I'm saying, like, how do numbers like $109,000 show up in prior year surplus, but in fact, they're portions of grants not expended previous years, moved to future years, right? So I'm still trying to look for it. I'm not going to find it until I can open the tabs. I'm still trying to look for it, where we got the 22.6% lift, 47,000 and change. And it can only be because we took money to do something, we didn't do it, we rolled it ahead. But did we not roll enough of it ahead? Because it should have been self-covering. If we didn't increase staff substantially, we didn't hire more directors or bring more other shared costs through IT general and whatever, if we didn't introduce anything new that's $47,000 worth, the only fundamental difference is, this is why I wanted to know about this, whether or not we had prior year surplus. The only fundamental difference is we took money to do work, didn't do it. And that should still be there. That $40,000 hole should be filled with money we took previously. And that's why I'm highly skeptical when I see a deficit on prior year surplus. With everything I look at, we did less than we hoped we would do last year, which rolls money to the future. So I really want to see before February 3rd, real numbers and tabs that I can open and see what they are. Because I don't see how we dug a $47,000 hole based on staff, 6.6, 3.3, that's not it. Based on any little travel thing, that's not it. It's contracted work, consultant work that we didn't do, or we just simply missed a payment somewhere, but we didn't do it, and it's not an expense roll to this year. Those are the numbers I really need to see, because this is a big difference. And February 3rd will not be the time to discuss it. We will have way too much else on our plate. So hopefully we'll see this, and I know, Yev's online, Stuart's online. I haven't seen this big of a discrepancy in any of the other budgets I've looked at so far. This is the biggest discrepancy I've seen so far between what I can pick off the page and say, yeah, okay, that makes sense. So please, what did we not do last year? And are we holding the money, or somehow did that money not go elsewhere? But we used to have, finance maybe's got something that's got to still be resolved between now and, January 31st. Please let us know if there's money somewhere that's not accounted for yet.
And can I further say that it'd be nice to have that delivered to us well in advance of our next meeting, so that we can reach out and maybe answer a lot of gray area questions before we even have the meeting. And Director Hennegrath.
Yeah, I just have a question. What's happening February 3rd?
Oh, special budget.
No,
when is there?
That is February 21st.
I thought we had I'm sorry, Chair, I'm speaking on the turn. I thought we had some other preview numbers.
It's okay, you are forgiven.
So it's him, not me. I just want to be clear.
All right. I'm looking at the screen. I'm looking around the table. I see nothing further. Good discussion around 10.1, 10.2 for information. Staff has got good feedback on it. I am going to move along, and we are now into public time. So I don't know that we have public attending today. There's a telephone number, a 250, ends in 416. Is there any questions for this committee today? Going twice. Any questions for this committee today?
Sherry, you want to let them know they're on the phone? It's *6 to unmute, I believe.
*6 to unmute. Thank you, Director Watson. And 2.5 to 3, third time ask. Thank you for participating in our meeting today. All right, made it. Next meeting is February 18th, 2025, here at 1 p.m. Thank you for indulging with me today. It was fun. Maybe a little bit smoother the next time through. But we'll see y'all tomorrow.
See y'all.
Thanks, Kelly. 1, 2, 3. Yes.